Today, the RTX 4090 should not be used for this, Intel's next-gen CPUs lose cores, Nvidia's 4080 pricing is way more, and here we have the first RX 7000 GPU. Welcome everyone to Gamer Melt. First up for today, Nvidia's RTX 4090 is a beast of a GPU, albeit with beastly prices, but it's powerful to say the least. Well, that power looks to cause a major issue for anyone hoping to use an external GPU dock, whether to boost your laptop for gaming or whatever you need it for. In a new video from Jared's Tech, he compared the RTX 4090 in an enclosure with two laptops versus a PC. And let's just say there's a massive difference. Between the 20 games tested, the external dock was as little as 35% all the way up to 85% slower than the 4090 in a desktop. As for why, it definitely boils down to the Thunderbolt port. Simply put, there isn't enough bandwidth to handle the RTX 4090. Thanks to Thunderbolt's encoding and PCI Express lanes dedicated to output, the GPU only gets around 25.92 gigabits per second, which is just over 3 gigabytes per second. And as you can see in this test, the two laptops had far less PCI Express bandwidth when compared to the desktop PC. Now, I will say that he was forced to make some modifications like putting in a bigger PSU, but nothing that should have changed the results. The only odd thing you noticed was that one of the laptops was a bit faster at times, even though the CPU was much worse. As for why, it could be a number of reasons, but there was still a massive difference between the external cards and the PC. So for that reason, until something changes or Thunderbolt 5 comes out, I definitely wouldn't suggest running a 4090 externally. Next up, if you're like me and you've recently had an itch to play a really good World War II based FPS, I've got the game for you. It's called Enlisted, and they've sponsored this video so I can tell you all about it. And man, is there a lot to tell. For starters, it's a free-to-play multiplayer shooter that has these massive scale battles with not only foot soldiers, but light vehicles, tanks, armored cars, and even aircrafts. Not only that, but it has customization for each soldier, tons of destructible objectives in the environment, even construction, and all of that is done with historical accuracy. From equipment to vehicles, locations, and even the campaigns are all crafted with historical authenticity in mind. To top it all off, you can play it for free on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, and it offers cross-platform support. But make sure to use my link in the description so you can also get an exclusive bonus with the game. Once again, thanks to Enlisted for supporting the channel. Next up for today, we're already getting specs on Intel's 14th and 15th gen CPUs. The story comes from WCCF Tech, who's seen slides that go over core count, TDP, and the iGPU of Intel's next gen parts. Starting things off, we have 14th gen Meteor Lake, which if you remember is set to be a multi-chip module design similar to AMD's Ryzen CPUs. I guess Intel doesn't mind making chips out of glue now. Regardless, according to this, Meteor Lake is set to move backwards in terms of cores, getting a maximum number of 22 cores instead of 24. That breaks down into 6 performance cores and 16 efficiency cores. What sucks about this is that the core loss is in their performance cores, so Meteor Lake will have to bring a ton more performance to make up for that. Still, the base TDP is at 125 watts down to 65 and 35 watt models, and each CPU comes with 4 XE cores, which is 2 less than the lower end ARC A310, so not bad for an integrated GPU. As you can see, they moved down to 14 cores made from 6 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores. Finally, we have Arrow Lake, which should be their 15th gen parts. These bring Intel back to 24 cores with the same configuration as their 13th gen. Meteor Lake is set to use the Intel 4 node, while Arrow Lake would move to their 20A node. At the end of the day, it's pretty wild that Intel would move back in core count, but given the power draw of Raptor Lake, plus they've done it before, I guess it's not too surprising. Next up, it looks like the RTX 4080 is set to be way more expensive than Nvidia said, at least if you aren't in the US. In a new report by Video Cards, they mention the fact that some board partners aren't eager to share pricing info with retailers, even though most of the designs have been announced, and we're starting to see why. The retailer Pro Shop has recently listed quite a few GPUs in Finland, and as you can see, they get up to an unreal 1,970 euros, which is obviously a far cry from 1,200. With that said, Finland has one of the highest VAT taxes in the EU at 24%, and that's that's likely where this is coming from. Though at the end of the day, if you were going to get one of these higher end ones, I'd almost suggest paying a little more for the 4090. Then again, it's sold out as of now. Still, the cheapest card is over 1,600 euros. So if you're in the EU, you may want to brace yourself for some wild prices. Luckily, Newegg recently listed a PNY card for MSRP. It's not the highest end model or anything like that, but it proves that at least some cards will be at the announcement price. Of course, MSRP is still absurdly high anyway, so fingers crossed that AMD can bring those prices down. Time, as always, will tell. And lastly for today, we finally have it. HXL on Twitter shared images of one of the upcoming RX 7900 GPUs. As you can see, it's next to AMD's last gen 6900 card, and it's a bit longer with bigger fans. It's also a bit more rounded than last gen, and definitely similar to the one teased at AMD's Ryzen 7000 event. When we look closer, we can see a red PCB, which means this is a prototype, but it's almost certainly the final design for their reference card. When we look at it from a top view, we can see that while it's still a 3-slot design, the fin stack is much thicker and beefier than last gen, so it's clearly hoping to pull off quite a bit of heat. One thing it's missing is the backplate, but the final design should definitely have it. The card also has two 8-pin connectors like last gen. Now normally I'd say they could add another by the final product, but given the heatsink, there isn't exactly room for another one. Either way, we know that AMD won't be using a 12-pin connector, so two 8-pins could be their go-to. And while that may not sound like enough to challenge Nvidia, don't forget that AMD is promising a 50% performance per watt uplift over last gen, so it's likely at least 50% faster, and given the heatsink is so big, it's potentially a lot faster than that. Plus, this may only be the 7900 XT, to which a known leaker recently shared some images on the subject. As you can see, it mentions XT20 and XTX24, which confirms the recent rumors that there's a 7900 XT GPU with 20 GB of memory and a 7900 XTX with 24. At the end of the day, AMD's next-gen GPUs are looking quite exciting with a very nice design, but as I've said many times over, it's likely set to boil down to price. And don't forget to jump into the amazing World War II FPS with Enlisted. Just visit my link in the description to get an exclusive bonus. And thanks again to Enlisted. So while that does it for today, what do you think about AMD's RX 7000? Do you think they'll challenge Nvidia while being much cheaper, or what? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, have a great day.